Do you know what I feel, Benji? Good morning, everyone. I feel like you're the only person that comes like actually with more energy than I have onto this live.
Really? What do people, what,
Yeah.
they're here and they're just like, hey, hi.
No, but I
Good.
think you out energy me. I think you actually like, which I love. I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That is me.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you so much for coming back. And I feel like I need to be closer to the camera. I need to be like,
This is what I do though. You see my videos, I'm literally like in your
oh,
face. I'm like, hi Benji here. Maybe I should
I
go
love
back
it.
a second.
No, 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 it's cool. It's cool. Good morning, everyone. If you're joining us live on LinkedIn, on YouTube, Benji, because you go live every week as well, right? On is it TikTok and Instagram or just TikTok?
Just on TikTok, go live
Yeah.
every Monday, 8 till 9 p.m. Yeah.
Every Monday, 8 till 9 p.m. I
Yeah.
need to start listening to that, you know.
Honestly, like please do. It's more of a
Yeah.
hangout to be fair. I see it as
Mhm.
my office hours. So I
Yeah.
do have some awesome people who stay for the whole hour. But a lot of
Okay.
the time, especially if I've started like a particularly like particular discussion that people are really interested in, they'll drop in and
Yeah.
ask questions about it and then like leave. So
Amazing.
cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, if anybody hasn't heard of Benji Kusi, like where have you been? Right, Benji Kusi on TikTok. You're quite the content creator. Do you call yourself a content creator, Benji?
You can call me anything if the chat clears. No, I mean I wear many hats. I wear many hats, and content
Yeah.
creator is just one of the hats that I wear. I also don't mind influencers. A lot of people who make content don't necessarily like that term.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily mind. As long as
Okay.
you're an activist, an
Yeah.
educator, as long as you're listening, then I don't necessarily mind.
Amazing, amazing. And we've got Adrian. Adrian was my guest from last week. Good morning, Adrian. Adrian, I'm sorry to report to you that I didn't have time to do your exercise with Benji. So what Adrian and I did last week before we went live, we stared at each other for a whole minute in silence.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. To like center
Do you know
yourself.
what? Yeah, and it really like there's something about the connection with the other person. But me, the thing that happened for me, my heartbeat completely slowed down and everything. Yeah, it was really interesting. Yeah. Anyway, next time, the next time you come on, even though I know this is your second time, right? So,
That's half the charm.
yeah,
You know.
exactly. So today I'm joined by the incredible Benji Kusi. If you follow him on TikTok, you know. What's your TikTok following now, Benji? What
Oh,
mega number are you at now?
I think it's like 197K, something like that.
Something like that, you know, just around like 200K on TikTok. That's all. Um, so and good morning, Sylvia Anna as well. Good morning, Sylvia, down in Cornwall, which is where Adrian is as well. And please do tell me what the weather is, right? Because I know that we've had like some cold snaps. Benji, where are you? You're London based, right?
Yeah, I'm in Tottenham.
How's it looking outside for you this morning?
Do you know what? It's really lovely and bright and crisp in its coldness, which I love. Well, I don't love, but I don't mind
Hmm.
that. It's when it's like
Yeah.
really cold and damp, which it has been a lot recently. That's what
Yeah.
gets me. How about you?
I am in Shropshire and it's pretty cold and grey, to be honest. But I've been out in it already. I've been out for my little morning walk
Oh,
that I like
nice.
to do most mornings. Yeah, it helps to clear the head, right?
Oh,
So,
nice. Yeah,
yeah.
I'm actually currently training for a marathon.
Are
So
you?
yeah, so I'm trying to move
Wow.
as little as possible if I'm not running.
Which marathon are you doing?
London Marathon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Incredible. So you haven't got long, so you must already be like up to like 15 miles or something at least, right?
You would hope. Um, I was kind of in denial that it was happening until like a month ago, and he started training a month ago, and I've got 6
Okay, okay.
months to go. So
Yeah.
we're kind of
Okay.
up to like I can do like a 18K comfortably.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know how
Cool.
many miles that is. Is that maybe that could be 15 miles? maybe.
No, not quite.
I don't know.
I think it's about 11, 12 miles.
Oh
That's
no.
not bad. So you're nearly at like you're nearly at half marathon distance. So that's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that I have, it's audacity. And that will take
Yeah.
you far on the day.
It's all mindset. And do you know what? I've just started listening to Carol Dweck Mindset, the updated book. Finally, Adrian has said this is about the exercise. It's whatever you want it to be, but that exercise can allow you presence with one another to truly appreciate each other. I love that, Adrian. Honestly, I really do. And thank you for leaving me with that gift as well. Sylvia Anna, do you really want to know about a weather cold, windy, and rainy always in Cornwall, it seems, in the morning? In the summer, it will be like blue skies. So today I'm joined by so your introduction, Benji. I've moved away from ChatGPT. This has now been written by Claude, right? I've dashed ChatGPT to the curb.
Interesting.
Yes, this is now written by Claude today. But what is missed out is that you're now a marathon runner, right? So that bit's missed out. So just allow that. Today I'm joined by Benji Kusi, an inclusion and wellbeing consultant, speaker, writer, and content creator based in South London. Benji has built a combined audience of over 200k across social media, where he shares educational content on anti-racism, LGBTQIA plus inclusion, kindness, and wellbeing. He's the author of Hope This Helps: How to Be Kinder to Yourself and Others. When I looked at that this morning, I kept saying, Hope This Helps. Published in 2023. And he was named a TikTok 2024 Voice for Change. I did not know that, and I love that. Benji's worked with organisations including Google, LinkedIn, Amazon, Greenpeace, and HSBC to bring inclusion and wellbeing to life in accessible and authentic ways. Welcome, Benji. Marks out of 10. Marks out of 10 for Claude for that intro.
It said based in South London.
Yeah, are you?
I wish was still the case. I'm from South London. I'm born and bred, and I rep South London hard. But I'm based in North London. But that's like a tiny detail. That's a recent change, relatively. The
nice.
So,
good. Yeah. Marks out of 10 for Claude today.
I would say, yeah, that's a solid 9 out of 10.
A solid 9, because I feed the marks back to him afterwards. I'll give Claude the feedback to say it was a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I think it was like succinct. It was to the point. Yeah, loved it.
Amazing. And we've got Martin Griffin in the chat. Good morning, Martin. Hi, friends. Martin, it's been a while. It's really good to see you back. And I've got a lively one for you this morning. So we are talking about, because I know this is a topic that you talk about quite a lot in TikTok, and the posts that seem to go quite lively tend to be about this topic. So just explain some of the types of things that you've talked about, and then we'll get into the questions that I've got for you in the areas that we're going to cover.
Yeah, so in regards to kind of these unwritten rules that hold back diverse talent, this is why I started doing the work that I do as somebody who works in inclusion and wellbeing, specifically in the workplace for the most part, because I realized that hard work wasn't enough. And I'd been raised. Yes, it wasn't correct. I'm from South London, Croydon, but yeah.
Croydon, massive. Okay. But now Tottenham. Okay, perfect. Yes. Yeah.
But I was raised from classic like Ghanaian like household, like and we're very hard workers, and I was raised to like get good grades and and work hard, son of like an immigrant, like those classic tropes. And I kind of got to the workplace and I was like wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, and I really hustled. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. There are people who, because of who they are, their background, and spaces they've been in before, who were just like jumping like over me, who were getting, opportunities that I wasn't getting, who were favored more. And I was like, wait, this is like not fair. Oh, and I was so young and so innocent. I was like 20, 21, 22, like, this isn't fair. Why is no one talking about this? And then, yeah. And obviously now in hindsight, I'm like, well, yeah, obviously it's not fair. It's set up for you to fail. And so, one thing that I am really passionate about is shedding a light on these unwritten rules for
Yeah.
two reasons. The first reason is that these rules shouldn't exist, right? They shouldn't be a thing. These kind of things that, because also it's not like as a rule, things we're going to talk about, they don't apply equally, right? They disadvantage certain people because of who they are disproportionately. And that should not be a thing. So we need to highlight it so we could dismantle it. But also the second thing is a bit more contentious, but I also feel like we need to highlight it so at least people know, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they shouldn't be a thing. It's unfair. Injustice should not be a thing. But at the same time, bills need to be paid. And I'd much rather be honest and transparent with people like me or who are treated in a similar way to me, right, about what the real is, so they know how to navigate, rather than allowing them to be sold a dream.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, spot on, absolutely spot on. Good morning, Teo, and good morning, Mina. Joining us from Dubai, I'm assuming, but if you're not in Dubai, let me know where in the world you are. But I love, I wrote a couple of things down that you said, Benji, that when you turned up at the workplace, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you were like giving it all, you realised that wasn't enough because of the unwritten rules. So there is that thing about, it's not enough. And what I'm going to do this morning, because I know, Benji, I know you like to live life on the edge, right, with these lives, because you're very spontaneous. You're the only guest that comes on here where I'm like, I know that you don't need to see the questions in advance or the themes that we're going to talk through, because you're just like, we're just going to riff here, right? So, but I've got some areas where I think these rules sometimes crop up. And then we can go through them, like almost like with the reality of, and I kind of want to tackle it from three perspectives. So kind of like they're like Fight Club. They are like Fight Club. Like nobody talks about these rules. So I want to. Mina says, "I am in the desert." She's in the desert of Dubai. Absolutely. I'd love to get your thoughts actually on whether this is an issue globally. So like somewhere like Dubai, there's still like unwritten rules and kind of professional etiquette, etc., that holds people back. That would be really interesting to know. So I'm gonna look at some particular angles, things like dress code, timekeeping, meeting behavior, email and communication etiquette, deadlines, etc. And we're going to look at it from the perspective of the individual, so the young Benji, the bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, who's still got bills to pay, right, and all of that. But we're also going to look at it from the line manager's perspective. So what can line managers do to help, debunk the rules, and then potentially the organization as well, right? So those are like the lenses that we're going to use. So let me say, of the things that I mentioned, do you want to choose where we go first? So I mentioned dress code, timekeeping, meeting behavior, email and communication, deadlines, feedback. Is there any way you want to go first?
Let's go deadlines.
Let's do that, because I think that was one of your posts, wasn't it? To explain to me that post. You shared a post of like a text exchange. Explain it for people that didn't see it.
Yes. So this is a post that went viral on TikTok. Not my post. Somebody else's post went viral. They're an intern working at a company, and their manager, the person who was assigning them work, wasn't clear in in a meeting, or just wasn't clear about when something was due. So they followed up and they checked. And they were like, can you please confirm when this is due by, when you'd like this by? And the response was something along the lines of, well, let's not be too slow, but also let's be mindful of quality. So whenever you can get it over, but not too late. That was essentially the response. Yeah. And they put it on TikTok, and they were like, wow, the corporate world is so frustrating. Why can't anyone just be clear about what they mean? Yeah. And it went viral, half because people were like, yeah, this is so ambiguous. But also a lot of people were like, excuse me, you should know, or you need to get to know, because this is actually quite a clear deadline. It obviously means this. Now, funnily, so people who said that were all saying different things. And then a lot of people also saying that in the workplace, in the corporate world especially, you can't expect to be handheld and spoon-fed, and you need to work things out on your own.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thoughts in the comments then around this, so deadlines. And I think when I posted about this, I wrote about deadlines because I had a manager who, as I think I put in the post, we used to call him Miranda Priestly, right? If you know, you know, right? So if you're a Devil Wears Prada fan, you know what Miranda Priestly was like. So we used to call him Miranda Priestly, but he was very, very unclear about deadlines. And he would get frustrated when things weren't delivered, even though he hadn't been clear about the deadline. So I remember I literally had to sit down with him the once and say, look, just so that, you know, me and the team can make sure that we do deliver, when you don't specify a deadline or when you sent an email, when do you want a reply by? Do you know what I mean? And thankfully, he did actually give a bit of clarification. So let's just break down, and that example that you gave from TikTok. So if a manager, so for the individual, what's your advice? And please do in the comments give us your thoughts as well. So if your manager doesn't give you a deadline, right, think about this as perhaps somebody younger in their career. So there may well be that distance between them and their manager potentially. How do you ask without sounding like you need hand holding? So what was your advice for, you know, younger Benji earlier in your career, and you've been given a piece of work with no deadline?
I would say don't internalize that cognitive load, right? That additional cognitive load. They're having the work you're being asked to do, which is to manage your manager's like expectations, right? Because they haven't been clear. To do that risk assessment of like, okay, well, if I submit at this time, then like what's the reaction going to be if I submit at this time?
Yeah.
Don't do any of that. Set your own deadline and share it. With a paper trail, ideally, like over email, is what I would say. So, okay, thank you so much. As mentioned, if it was on Slack, for example, just following up over email, you know, in response to you saying that this is the deadline, I'm going to be submitting it at 8 p.m. on Thursday. Let me know if there are any issues with that, and then stick to your own deadline unless they say anything different. Is what I would say.
Yeah. I love that. Let us know in the comments if you agree with that. So the advice for the employee is set the deadline and as you've sort of said, leave a paper trail. I think some people would potentially call that like, you know, covering your rear, but it's not really that. You are just clarifying where there is a lack of clarity, and you're just sort of saying, and I guess, and you've done that by assessing the workload, what else you've got on, etc. So you're going to be like, okay, I can deliver to that. And just checking in that's okay. That's really reasonable, no?
I think it's very reasonable, and I mean, I think I would, in that instance, give yourself some grace and say that it works for you.
Yeah, and you can always finish with it. Yeah, you can always finish with to the manager. You know, if you drop an email, say, you know, if you're not okay with that, please let me know. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is the deadline that I'm working to. If you're not okay, let me know. I'm going back now into the comments. Mina, I'm reading the description. I believe managing your leader is a skill that requires etiquette and grace, definitely. And I love the point that you sort of raised, Benji, that I guess for a young Benji or somebody much earlier in their career, they may not yet have that skill set to kind of manage those difficult leaders, right? So we're going to do both in terms of like the practical tips and all of that stuff. Good morning, girlies. Good morning, Junior Beeman. How are you doing? It's really good to see Junior in here. Teo, thanks for this session. Unwritten rules do not apply equally. Highlighting them means people know and be able to navigate these in their career journey for sure. Clarity. So Junior is a network lead, was at NatWest, was Rainbow, is now Multicultural Network. Clarity is one of the most, and is also an exec coach. Clarity is one of the most impactful long-term leadership behaviors. I cover this in Corn Ferry all the time with senior leaders. Yeah. I've got a question as well, back to you on this, Junior, about clarity, and to you as well, Benji. And it's the link to, and I'm going to throw it out to Mina as well if she's still on. It's the link to culture. Do we think that this is more endemic in British culture, like lack of clarity? Is it more of an issue in British corporate culture, that it's like the ways of operating? So have a think about that one. I follow, Mina's got here, I follow the elite recruiter who talks about this so well and resonates. A lot of it is common sense as well, and EQ for sure. That lack of clarity can be a power move. 100%. I've definitely had bosses that definitely do this. Miranda Priestly was absolutely like that, because it means goalposts can be moved without informing you or getting your agreement or consent. I've absolutely seen that, Adrian. I kid you not. What about neurodivergent staff who often need clear deadlines and support, such as check-in? Absolutely, and hopefully, actually, the advice that we're giving. So, for example, the way you phrased it, Benji, that should really help, I think, for neurodivergent staff. But definitely, it's something managers need to be thinking about. Younger people need guidance and parameters. In time, they will get it, and it will become more muscle memory. Yeah, I agree. Especially the longer you've been in that environment. I mean, the fact that you could spot it and identify. Love that. Okay, every company or country has its own cultural norms that inform professional behaviour. What are your thoughts on this then? So my view that maybe this lack of clarity, is it more of a British thing? That's my question.
So yes, I would say it is. I think like cultural collaboration is something that I work with organizations on quite a bit.
Yeah.
And it's a tough one because I think we should be using it as like a lens, i.e. like cultural norms, like and how they tie to professional norms should be like a lens for understanding, not like a box to like categorize. And I've seen a lot of actual tensions in organizations that I've worked with who are like multinational, where people are operating these assumptions about what people who are from certain cultures are like or tend to be like. And it is true, like for example, if there are countries in Eastern Europe where they have cultures that are stereotypically a bit more direct than ours. I think that is definitely something that is like a noted thing. But at the same time, I'm really kind of delicate in the stereotypes that I affirm, how I affirm.
I hear you. Yeah. I mean, and then Mina here in terms of culture. So obviously in Dubai where Mina is, and Mina is a global co-chair for SAP Business Women's Network, a network of over 20,000 members, which like just get your head around that. Culture does play a big part, and in some countries, communication isn't always literal, hence the unwritten rules. Yeah, so and Dubai is a really interesting microcosm of those cultural working differences as well. Let me just go back to you. We've got Joanne Conway. Good morning, Joanne. It's been so long. I feel like we're overdue a catch up. Let's just talk about what managers can do around deadlines. So picking up on Joanne's point here, because Joanne's put here, managers have a great opportunity to notice what rules or ways of working are just known by some. Clarity and transparency is so important. So in that example of deadlines, let's just talk about the role of managers. What should the manager be doing in terms of deadlines?
So I think as the manager, your responsibility is to recognize the information that you have that the person you're delegating work to doesn't have, right? If you're setting the work, more often than not, you have a greater understanding of the purpose, like the greater purpose for that work, right? You'd be somebody who's like maybe done that work before, maybe you were in that role before, like you've got so much more contextual knowledge and understanding. Maybe you're giving it to somebody else who that person isn't in contact with. So it's your duty to use the privilege and the power that affords you to make things as easy and as smooth as possible for the person you're delegating the work to complete the task in a way that works for them, also works for you, and like works for the wider project. And I think it's about being clear, but also providing space for feedback, and also being clear and transparent about the trade-offs. A comment that I got quite a few times on the post that I made on this was that, well, sometimes there isn't a fixed deadline. And it's like, okay, well, you should make it then. You make the deadline. And if there is space, right? For example, if there is some flex, the client is like, we need it within this kind of period. We'd rather it came later. If it meant we get more information, for example, like we judge it, then communicate that. Be like forward. Like, this is the factors. I ideally would like it by Wednesday, so we can check it by Thursday, get it off by Friday. But ideally the client would love this piece of information that might land on Thursday. So let's keep an eye on that. And it's collaborative, right? But also clear.
Absolutely. Clarity is the key. And I love the advice there for managers. I want to dive back into a couple of the comments. So Teo was just talking about the usefulness of an email audit trail, especially where there is lack of clarity, especially in, for example, verbal comms. So you're pulling in that point, Teo. I think that's really important. Junior, just on the cultural thing as well, saying my clients in India and the US get a more directive style. And we are generalizing. So just to your point, Benji, but tend to get a directive style combined with the clarity, so the expectation is clear. It's just hard to find the balance between directive and micromanagement, because we want to trust and empower people, but we also want to get ish done on time. And I guess that's the thing. I guess the managers are cognizant of the levels, the level that the individual is at, whether or not you're negotiating a deadline, etc., all of those things. The other thing that I wanted to add as well was just about quality of the work as well. That's something that can be agreed, or the manager can help to define, what's the quality of the work that's expected, as well as the deadline. Right. Joanne has got here, knowing the unwritten rules is a privilege and often invisible to those who know them. And that's the real privilege. Exactly.
It is. And just jumping on the quality point, do you remember?
Yeah.
I was very intentional when I said, like, we're waiting for this piece of information, right?
Yeah.
Because like quality being like, we want it. If submitting it later means it'll be better to submit it later, that's still very vague. What do you mean by better? What makes this piece of work better? Is it you give regular detail, be specific, right? So people are like, oh, okay, yeah. So if I have this and this and this, then it's better and I can submit it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's done. I think it links to what Junior's got here. With any task, the leader should articulate the what, how much, by when. I don't leave any conversation with my boss without having these three things answered. Ain't catching me out at this big age. And there's there used to be a really lovely saying in kind of like corporate culture, which is what good looks like. And so people can either use that framework, or I've been reading a book recently. And that the guy in that, who's a founder, talks about definition of done, which I think is more of a US term, but the definition of done, what does it look like when it's done? And to Junior, that will talk to like quality, maybe what information has been included, maybe who has been consulted, the deadline, etc. All of that is incredibly useful. Jill, I remember a consultancy company that used the line, if you can't trust your people to dress appropriately, then please don't let them talk to the customer. So we're getting on to dress codes here, Jill, because I know that you've got a real thing about dress codes. I initially thought that was the positive message, and then realized that for some, especially when crossing national boundaries, it can be unhelpful. So let's get on to dress code. I feel that Jill's taken us down the dress code angle, right? Let's do it. Let's do dress code. And I want to share, so we're going to start with the individual. So anybody that knows my background knows that I started in accountancy. I'm an accountant, would you believe? I started at EY. I remember being pulled up when I was at EY, when I was a junior trainee, for what I was wearing. I think I was wearing like some flowing culottes. And like, and I used to wear a lot of color. I'm sure this is why I now wear black all the time. I think it was that dressing down by that manager. It was a female manager. That I think just led me to be like, okay, I just got to live in this corporate straitjacket now, right? So I really then sort of toned down what I wear. So let's get on to dress codes, unwritten dress codes, especially. So here's the question for the individual: if someone genuinely doesn't know what smart casual or business casual or business appropriate means for their workplace, what do they do? New workplace, the dress code is business casual or smart casual.
This is such a tough one. This is like a really, really like hard one. Especially because I don't think it should be down to the individual. I'm sorry. Now, what advice would I give? What practical advice would I give? Maybe like, as Benji, like what would I say if it was like a friend or someone I met and they'd ask me that question? I'd probably say something along the lines of like, try and dress smarter than you think you should. And then when you get there on the first day, have a look around, and as soon as you feel comfortable kind of with your manager or somebody you're working with, just ask a direct question and just see what they say. But information gather and then go from there. But I just feel so passionately that it should just not be down to the individual to do that guesswork. It's awful.
Yeah. So I love, so two pieces of advice that you said. First of all, dress slightly. So if you're not sure, you're starting a new place, maybe dress slightly smarter than you think you should. I like that. I mean, do you know what? That's a good rule for life, generally. No.
Yeah. No one's. It's rarer you're gonna get pulled up on dressing too smart, right? Or doing too much, arguably, especially in a workplace. You're more likely. you're doing too little, whatever that is.
Yeah, I like that. So probably dress smarter than you should, and than you usually would. And then when you get there, you sort of said like look around and maybe ask people their views, etc.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
say.
Okay, that's reasonable. Yeah, I think that's really reasonable. What about I want to get onto your thoughts on dress codes. So some organizations, I think some organizations still have dress codes or at least guidance. I remember I used to work in the same organization as Jill many years ago. And I remember actually walking into one particular location and I was like, they haven't got a dress code, they need one.
Mm.
There was a lot of, and was me getting older, but there was a lot of midriff. And
Okay.
yeah, there was a lot of skin on show
Right.
generally, things that should probably be put away. And so I used to be like, yeah, they need a dress code. What are your thoughts on dress codes? Does it help or not?
I think it absolutely can help. I think it does
Yeah.
help. I think
Mhm.
most organizations all organizations should have a dress code. Now,
Yeah.
the thing is like when I say dress code, I just mean like specific details about how they would like, people who work there to show up, right?
Yeah.
And present. And that needs to be collaborative. It needs to be regularly reviewed, right?
Yeah.
It needs to be inclusive, specifically to like also like characteristics, of course, and things like that. But you should make it clear, because ultimately, then therefore, you're more likely to have an expectation around dress code that isn't biased in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
I love some of these comments here. First of all, do a Joey and I've seen this as a Friends reference, and wear layers you can strip off. I like that one. I do like the concept of layers actually, in terms of, I think especially with offices that are like cold and all sorts of things, but yeah, layers which may or may not include levels of smartness. So you could like, maybe do or don't bring a blazer, or maybe do or don't bring a cardigan to sort of smarten
Mm,
something. Do you know what I mean? It can like
mm,
help to sort of like kind of just chop and change. It can be so ambiguous. Check the company policy document and with HR.
yeah.
Sometimes dressing smartly is uncomfortable and affects behavior for neurodivergent people. Good shout out, Phoebe. That's really interesting.
And that is the thing. I
Go ahead,
feel like
Phoebe.
an aversion to like codes can be like shrouded under this like guise of like, we just want everyone to be themselves. And
Yeah,
really what it is that we want free reign to judge people without any sort of accountability or any repercussion. Because
yeah,
if you make things explicit, it allows capacity for people to share feedback and be like, actually, that's not okay. That doesn't work for me. But if it's just
yeah,
like a general, yeah, smart casual, do what you
yeah,
want, it just means within that people can like justify their own prejudices.
yeah, 100%. Listen, we need to keep the guidelines because these men are getting a little too comfortable rocking up in these booty.
I love a good beauty short. And not in my own time. In my own time.
I'm glad you kept it quite clean, Junior, with booty shorts, because it could have been something.
I was just want to say something different as well for that, but let's keep it clean for LinkedIn.
Keep it PC. Yeah, this isn't TikTok.
No. In my own time.
Let's talk about dress codes in terms of like managers, right? So I shared my experience of getting pulled up about something I was wearing, right? What do managers do? Is it the role of a manager to pull someone up on their dress code? How would a manager deal with that? Thoughts?
I think it requires sensitivity. And I think it definitely needs to be a conversation for
Yeah.
sure. Ideally, managers will be supported by having some sort of guidance as
Hmm.
well. That doesn't mean to say that you should be like, slapping the guidance down the table and being like, follow that. It's more about, here we have these kind of expectations. And I would like to kind of inform you of these and also get your feedback as well. So we can kind of find a way that works kind of moving forward. And
Yeah.
definitely have it be aware that, like, especially if someone's starting new at a company, there are so many reasons why they may be presenting it in a certain way that you may not
Hmm.
be aware of, that you need to be considerate of.
Yeah.
So whether it could be, it could be the access they have, right?
Hmm.
A lot of people when they're starting jobs, they ain't been paid yet, especially if they're younger, and they can't afford to go out and buy
Yeah.
the clothes that you would like them to be wearing in the workplace. It could be due to culture and religion, right? Belief, like all these things can apply. It can be due to, you know, health, right? So I think it's really important to be sensitive, have an information sharing mindset, and then having a collaborative discussion.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to come to Sylvia and his comments here because I think it's important about how the manager's going to tackle it. So Sylvia's talked to you about the ability for the leader to co-regulate, and I guess so having that emotional intelligence in terms of how they handle something like this, and being able to read and feel the needs of the individual employee, a soft skill that does not produce immediate metrics but supports well-being in the long term. Might not be able to apply co-regulation to dress code though. Dress code, definitely, there seems to be a lot of support for it. One of the stories that I see reading was about some Puerto Rican men who had started working in the US. They wanted to be smart, bought what they thought was smart suits. I think this must have been the 80s because they'd bought shiny suits. In that working culture, shiny suits weren't what anyone else was wearing. Yeah, it can be hard to get it right, but there is definitely something about, I mean, I've had people ask me what they should wear to certain events in the workplace, especially if, say, for example, I used to work for a company that used to sponsor the cricket, and we used to have a cricket box. Jill will know of this. And a colleague who it was their first year coming to it said to me, you know, what do I wear? Like what's appropriate in that environment? So you can often find some guidelines. So we've talked about dress codes being useful, but done in a way that's collaborative. Individuals potentially just maybe dressing that a little bit smarter. The book, Joanne, if you're still on, the book that I was referring to is actually called Buy Back Your Time. It's kind of written more for like founders and business owners, but actually I actually find, I don't know your views, Benji, but a lot of founders that have built and scaled quite large companies have really good advice when it comes to hiring and like how to manage stuff, because they've had to become successful at that in order to grow. So that was the book, Buy Back Your Time. Okay, we've done dress code. Where do you want to go to next? We've done, what about timekeep? So we've got, the other ones I've got is timekeeping, meeting behavior, email and communication etiquette, feedback and performance reviews, social dynamics and networking, self-promotion, asking for help, mistakes.
Oh my gosh, there's so much here. I'd like to, where would you like to go? What do you think the juiciest area of discussion is that we haven't touched?
Let's go with, how about timekeeping? Because it's one that I've heard clients mention, and it's one that we touched on before, didn't we? So let's talk about timekeeping, because I've literally heard clients refer to new people that have come into the organization, particularly from like lower socioeconomic backgrounds in London specifically. I can think of a specific client. It was actually an architect in the center of London, big architects firm. And they talked about some people not fitting in, was literally the term that they used. And one of the examples that they gave me was about timekeeping. Now, here's the thing that was interesting, and they reflected this themselves. Within an office, and you know, I've got, for example, I've got a friend who, when I worked with her, this is many years ago in my 20s. See, I'm an early bird, right? So I like to be in the office when I used to go into the office for like 7 o'clock in the morning. Even now, sometimes if I'm going to Starbucks, don't judge me, I'm there for 7 o'clock in the morning, right? But my friend, she would tend to not turn up before 9:30, but she wasn't leaving before like, you know, 6, 7 either. Do you know what I mean? So what this individual was saying was, in the office, you do have different teams or different individuals that come in and out at different times. And then sometimes you have a new person that joins that sees that kind of level of flexibility and autonomy over what times people join. And then maybe they start not rocking up till 10 o'clock. You know what I mean? But everybody's watching them because they're new. And maybe they haven't had that conversation with the manager to say, is it okay if I come in a bit later? Do you know what I mean? So then they all of a sudden get marked down for that timekeeping. It's tricky, right?
It's tricky. I would say, you know, it was mentioned in the chat before around neurodivergence.
Yeah.
It's one of the first things that comes to mind here alongside culture. But starting with neurodivergence, you know, not everybody has the capacity to work in the same way. Not everybody is as productive sat at a desk from 9 till 5, right? Without moving, for example. And because of their neurotype. And so it's just not inclusive. It's not fair to have this expectation that everybody is going to show up at the same time, leave at the same time, and produce the same output, right? And do their best work. So there does need to be ideally some level of flexibility. I say ideally because ultimately there are certain business priorities, right, and objectives that need to be achieved that may need some sort of like regulated timekeeping. I'm not denying that. But we should have an output focused approach. So it's not that you can't do this because we say so, but that actually as a business, right, we are trying to meet this legitimate aim. We believe that this is a proportionate, right, means to achieving that aim. We've tried our best to make it as, as non-discriminatory as possible, right? And we hope that you're okay with aligning with that, right? And we've done due diligence. That's what I would say. I think with culture as well, similarly in many cultures, there isn't the same kind of approach to like timekeeping. In my culture, I'm Ghanaian, and we have more of a looser approach to timekeeping, right? And that is very cultural, right? And arguably, the culture of timekeeping we have in England and the UK, it's quite colonial, right? It is. And so we need to have an understanding that ultimately some people will be late from our perspective for things, but to them they are on time, right? Or it's reasonable to be there a bit later. And it's not inclusive. It's not fair for you to say that there should be this expectation that they should know, right, that you should be there on the hour. Is what I would say. So how do you navigate that? Someone in the chat said, "What about meetings?" So it's about understanding your team, or trying your best to understand your team and how they want to work. And if someone joins new and they're new, how do you do your best work? This is how we do our best work as a team, as a company. But how do you align with that? And what can we do to kind of forge a way forward that's collaborative?
Do you think people should be on time for meetings, though? I think is perhaps the specific question. Should be, I mean, if this is still Jill that's asking this question, I remember, you have in companies, certain people get a reputation just for always being late for meetings. Like the meetings start, they always rock in like 10, 15 minutes late. So what is your thought? I don't know whether it's different now that we're doing Zoom. It probably isn't. What are your thoughts about people being late for meetings?
I think it depends on the meeting. I think it really depends on the meeting for me, and also who's in the meeting. It's such a hard question. I would say that ultimately when we are working, it's really hard. My default response, right, is to say that if you have agreed a time to be somewhere, and you know that person wants you to be there at that time, then it is respectful to be there at that time. I would just say though that like around that expectation from the other party should also be with the understanding that like everyone is different and like life happens, and that and not to jump to conclusions if somebody is late on like a single instance, right? Don't think that immediately means that they don't value your time, or that they don't care, or they're not good at timekeeping, quote unquote, or whatever it is, right? Be curious. There are many reasons why someone may be in your mind late. Now, if you have been curious and you've had that conversation and you've tried to kind of like be collaborative, especially in a workplace, and they're still doing it, then absolutely, then you can be firm in your conviction to say that that person is somebody who is not respectful of your time, and they need to change their behavior.
It's really interesting. I think I can't remember if the last time we spoke about this, I shared with you that saying, right? That somebody told me a couple of years ago, 5 minutes early is 10 minutes late. And he said that was something his teacher had told him. And I think it links back to what you were saying about culturally, the British culture is very much like be on time. That's the so I think going into most workplaces, I think certainly my advice to somebody, if somebody was new, like a young person going into an organization, my advice would be on time for everything, even be early. Be early for things until you have then figured out the culture, or you've had conversations with somebody and you've agreed, you know, how you can work, etc. Junior has said, now Junior's, you know, not a newbie, so he said, I rely on Network Rail, therefore I get there when I get there. And the thing, Phoebe, in terms of timekeeping, does the work get done, right? So this is more, you know, work based on outputs rather than, you know, somebody sat at it, because a lot of the people that are sat there early at their desk are just doing online shopping, right? Let's just be honest about it.
Yeah.
Does the work get done? It's always confounded me that even job descriptions, we rely on someone assessing how long things take. Let's have a look at this comment. Adrian, I worked in a place where I was arriving at 7 a.m. and leaving at 5:36. A colleague with less experience was arriving at 10:30, 11 and leaving at 8:39. That colleague got promoted over me. And when I asked about it, I was told that management saw them still at work when managers are leaving. The impression was that they were passionate. The colleague and management were white. Yeah, I mean the late hour, the overtime working, and I say that. So I shared earlier that I tend to get into the office early, like say 7. I've worked many jobs where I still am there at 7 at night as well. But that's just, I think that's just my finance training. So you kind of like have to ignore that a little bit. But yeah, unfortunately, Adrian, that like long hours, late hours culture. It's not even a long hours culture, it's late hours culture. And it's not just that you're working late, it's being seen to work late. Unfortunately, in some cultures, people know that there's a game that you play, right? Yeah. The interesting comment here, Dee, Zoom and Teams meetings have lowered the standards of meetings. If you turn up in person, you wouldn't have a okay.
I disagree with that.
Videos on or off. Oh my gosh, I did a whole post about this. Videos on or off. Right.
No.
Okay. Right. I'm gonna lay my cards out. I'm very much I did a post. I'm very much a videos on. Well, it depends. I think it depends. If you're there to just listen, if you're there to just listen, you're not presenting, you don't need to sort of form any connection. This is a really good point, Dee. I didn't have this on my list. So videos on or off on Zoom or Teams, right? So my stance is, if you're on a call and you're there just to listen, you're not presenting. I mean, I've been on, for example, a deaf awareness session where we were asked to turn our cameras off, right, with good reason, right? So, or you're not well, or you're eating, or whatever. You know, there may be lots of good reasons to turn it off. However, if you are trying to have some sort of connection with the people, and it's people that you probably don't know as well. So if it's people that you don't know and you're trying to build a relationship or a connection with those people, put your camera on. For emphasis. What are your thoughts, Benji? Come on, disagree with me.
So there's this term which I think actually applies to a lot of this conversation, right? So many aspects of the discussion. You know, this that I use a lot in regards to, because it relates to the Equality Act, and it's about making sure that everything is a proportionate means to like a legitimate aim, essentially. And that's what comes to mind here. The reason why I had that visceral reaction is not because I don't hope that people turn their camera on when I am in a call with them. I do a lot of like virtual training, and I always ask people to turn their camera on if they have the capacity to. It makes all the difference. Especially when we're talking about something that is like sensitive or difficult, or people are meeting you for the first time virtually. It's hard enough as it is without people speaking to a black hole, you know? So absolutely. But what I would say is that it needs to be a proportionate means to a legitimate aim. So what is the reason, as you've highlighted? Is it that you just want people to be sat there? You know, I've been at companies where my manager would message me and be like, oh, turn your camera on. And it's like a town hall meeting with like the whole organization. Oh, but it looks good. But I'm not speaking, I'm not presenting. Like it's like 4 p.m. on a Friday. It's been a long week. I'm even doing emails on the side because I'm overworked. It's not proportionate, right? But if it is, like you said, a situation where I'm meeting for the first time, we're talking something important or XYZ, then yes, it's proportionate, and that should be communicated.
I love that. Yeah, great question there, Didi. Honestly, I love that. presenteeism or pretendism. I like that. Yeah, it's that's an interesting one. So we've talked about a few examples. Was there anything else that we that I mentioned that we haven't covered that you want us to dive into?
This is on my list.
Mm-hmm.
This is on my list because it's something which I was so intrigued by. It's one of my most recent posts on LinkedIn, and it's
Yeah.
this idea of like pick don't pile at networking events. I don't know if you saw that post that I did, but I'm just so intrigued to like hear your response on this, your thoughts on this, and those in the chat as well. So I actually hosted this networking event, and as part of like the discussions we were having,
Yeah.
it came up that my really good friend Joanna, who runs this the network that ran this event. Anyway, she is a black woman, young black woman, and she
Mm-hmm.
said that early on in her career, she was told that when you are at any sort of networking event and there's food, you really need to pick, not pile. If you pile your plate, it makes it look like you were just there for the free food and the nibbles and the good time, and you're not there to make connections and you're not serious. So have one or two things on your plate that you're kind of nibbling on and work the room. It makes you look more professional and more serious. And that blew my mind. I'd never heard of that before. I think it's wild. What's your
I think
thoughts?
it's crazy. I think it's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I don't even know where to start. I don't
Right.
think it has any base. I do wonder, and this I think comes to almost like, what is the source of some of these unwritten rules? You know, some of them sound as though they've come out of My Fair Lady or something. Do you know what I mean? Like there is just this My Fair Lady being the archaic, like Victorian age something. I genuinely think that some of these have just come from some crazy places, and unfortunately they've been adapted as
Mm,
like corporate etiquette as well, and they're
mm.
not right. Yeah, I've never heard that at all. I've never heard that.
But then at the same time, remember I said earlier about the fact that part of this, the value of this discussion is highlighting things that people need to know about. My immediate reaction was like, whoa. But then I thought about it and I was like, well, I am a man, and this is advice that was given to a woman, and I'm sure that kind of plays a part in it. I'm sure there are probably spaces where people would judge, based on gender lines, race lines, like
Mhm.
socioeconomic class lines, like size lines. I'm sure if you are, somebody who, has a larger body, like all these things may influence the
Yeah,
extent to which you piling your plate may be
yeah,
perceived. And this is a
perceived.
real thing that people need to consider.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, even
yeah,
though it's
exactly.
egregious, it's awful.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's so interesting, and that's the whole point of this conversation. You know, obviously we've delved into a few examples, but actually, it's just this whole thing about these judgments,
Mhm.
these unwritten rules. You know, as Martin sort of put here, some of these are like literally Victorian or like sort of
Mm.
caveman era, um, that are just there, and and it links back to one of the examples I was giving about people then saying something like, that person doesn't fit in.
Yes.
And actually, I would really encourage people the next time you maybe hear somebody sort of like using that term, somebody doesn't fit in, really say why. Why
Mm,
do they not fit in?
mm.
Right? It's just absolutely interesting. It's giving don't love your job
Job
your
your
love.
love. Yeah, I saw that I went viral on TikTok a while back, and yeah, it's so ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. So what can organizations do to raise awareness of the unwritten rules, and how do almost like because you talked about dismantling them, how can organizations dismantle them or at least raise awareness of them?
We need to bring them into the light, right? Bring them into the light
Mhm.
and examine them. How you bring them into the light is that you have discussions like this, right?
Mm,
Have forums. There are already forums happening at your organization, right? For example, if
mhm.
you have ERGs, people are talking about these things, right? At the
Yeah,
meetings, these things are being discussed. Tap into that insight, right?
yeah,
To find a way to identify these barriers that you should be, these rules that you should be
yeah,
challenging.
yeah,
Um, and by challenging them, what I mean by that is, if there is a way to, for example, to have policy that clarifies
hmm,
news, do that, right? If there's a thing where it's more like people are expressing, using these rules to like be microaggressive, or to express prejudice, or to discriminate, then training, have conversations, bring up a town halls, like make it clear, set a social norm, right, of challenging these norms, right?
Yeah.
And I think also recognize that these things are very contextual to identity and to background, and also to time and to place. So there are many things which you may not be aware of because of who you are, your background, your career trajectory, and also, all these factors, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have intellectual humility, especially if you're a leader at a company, and you tap into experiences of those around you to find out what these things are, so you can help create a more fair and equitable environment for people to work in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just you said something, the phrase that you said about bringing them to light, and whatever that looks like. I remember one of the examples, because I did a conversation similar to this, but it was about the etiquette in arts venues, and it was actually with somebody. So some people might know I used to sit on the board at Birmingham Symphony Hall, right? And when it comes to like classical music and classical performance, there's a whole like etiquette around it, and it actually puts people off. People don't know what to wear, they don't know when to clap, they don't know if they can do this, that, and the other. And the audiences are quite tricky, right? The audiences that have been going a long time will judge people if they do things at the wrong time. And what's interesting, the CBSO, so the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, recently have brought out, they had a new CEO, they brought out written rules of like, here's what to expect, right? But some people are kind of like barked at it and have like, no, you shouldn't need to write it down, and we don't want these things change. And to me, it links to like what Phoebe was saying. It's just, it's a way of excluding. Like it's like it's snobbery. It's the ultimate like form of snobbery, right? And people don't want it written down because they want to be able to judge, and they want to be able to like bring their biases and assess who does and doesn't fit the criteria. That's my view. So actually I'm totally with you in terms of these things do need to be written down, because that's how we actually start to dismantle them. And challenge them. I love what you said about challenging them as well. And Martin suggested reverse mentoring. That's a really good one as well, actually. I think like really bringing it to the senior leaders in terms of, so in some of those conversations, I guess, challenging some of these unwritten rules, or, I could imagine a young Benji in a reverse mentoring situation explaining, I came into the organization and I was doing this, and it wasn't enough because of these unwritten rules. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Question here from Sylvia Anna. How do you facilitate this kind of conversation when people are afraid to speak up because of potential repercussions? That's a good question, Sylvia.
That's a great question. And I think, that's a really great question. So, anonymous forms of like feedback sharing, right? Be really powerful here, like pulse surveys, and being very clear about governance, like review the data, like how it's going to be stored, how it's going to be used, all those things. I think also as well, like leading from the top. So I've worked with companies that have had some really powerful like company meetings where leaders have kind of stood on the stage and speaking about their own experiences and the barriers that they've had to kind of navigate. And I think if you it provides that opportunity and permission for other people to also be vulnerable and also to be open. So I think that's also another thing that we can use as well. But that is a tough one, and I think it's something that needs to be considered.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely like the idea you said about anonymous. So providing anonymous feedback loops. I think organizations that do that are always useful. So having those anonymous feedback loop, and then maybe somebody raising it in maybe as a thread. So if there is a thread, or things like Slido, there's all kinds of tools, even if the organization doesn't have any official ones, that can be used. A Slido that sort of just goes out one Friday, that's like, what are the unwritten rules that you feel held you back in this organization, right? That's anonymous. Sunita, good morning. I'm always talking about what to expect to help build knowledge and awareness, if helpful for colleagues and clients who are curious to know more about the unwritten and invisible. And I love that what to expect. I think that's exactly the language that that symphony orchestra use about coming to a concept, what to expect. So it's not it's not painted as like, rules that, you've got to follow, but it's kind of couched in quite a nice way.
Absolutely.
reverse and reciprocal mentoring can be so beneficial for both parties if people are equipped with the right skills and know-how. Absolutely. And then Taya, I love this comment. And then Benji, I'm going to come to you for your one piece of advice for either the individual that's gone into somewhere that they can see these unwritten rules, and then also the organizations. Forums that facilitate discussion of different experiences are vital. Absolutely. Slido is great. It really is, Martin. I totally agree with you. What's your one piece of advice then for maybe individuals, especially earlier in their career, that have gone into an organization that they can see has got lots of unwritten rules that are starting to trip them up?
As my my mum would say, shine your eye. She'd be like, shine your eye, right? Shine your eye. Please don't be naive. To the individual, right? That's what I would say.
That's got to be a first on here. Shine your eye. Explain it to those that don't understand that lovely Ghanaian phrase.
So what it means is, I think it's across many cultures, similar cultures, but essentially just means like, don't be naive, like open your eyes, like pay attention, look around you, don't make any assumptions, right? And try your best to be cognizant of like the traps that may befall you. Essentially.
I love that. I love that. Shine your eye.
Shine your eye, you know, and gain information. I think like join your ERG. If your company has an ERG, hopefully there should be a safe space for you to go in and be like, hey, like what's the rundown? Like, how do I navigate this environment? What do I need to do?
ERGs definitely is the source of information, advice, and also like helping to raise it. And I love, Sunita, as well, that you said that your mum gave you advice as well. Which is great if you've got parents that my mum wouldn't have had a clue. Do you know what I mean? In the corporate space, and that's part of the challenge of like social mobility and cultural differences and all that as well. Interesting. The things that no one tells you. I love this advice. Shine your eye. Advice for the organizations then. What do you want to leave organizations with, or people that work maybe with organizations? What should they be doing more of, or what's one thing they can do?
I just 3 simple words, like codify, right? So like I will clarify, right? And then get feedback, right? And evaluate consistently, right? It shouldn't be a one size fits all. It should be general parameters, is what I would say. That's the 3 things.
I love that. Benji, we're going to wrap it up there, but I love that, especially the feedback thing, the anonymous feedback. Benji, it's been amazing. Thank you for coming on for part 2. Benji, so I know you're mainly on like TikTok, Instagram as well, or mainly TikTok? So
I'm on Instagram.
Where can people find you? What's your handle on like TikTok and Instagram?
So my handle is at Benji Kuzi. So on everything. So yeah, just my first and last name. And you can find me on Instagram, TikTok. I'm even on Substack. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. Those are the main platforms you can find me on.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Substack. We need to talk about that once we're off, once we're back in the green screen. Down in the origins of professionalism. I think we talked about that in the last one, didn't we? Professionalism. Did we talk about that term, professional? Yeah, it's a class filter. Old money versus nouveau riche, for instance. Yeah, definitely. It's a whole... when rules aren't explicit, the lack of clarity is often used to exclude, to filter in-group from out-group. Absolutely, like 100%. That's part of the reason that some people don't want it written down, right? So please do follow Benji. Benji goes live every Monday. So we bookend the week. I've just realised we bookend the week. So you go live 8 till 9. I wonder if I should I start my lives early? Should I start at 8 as well? Or is that too early? Should I start at 8 on a Friday?
I think 8's fine for a Friday. Yeah.
We'll see. Put your comments. Give me your thoughts. Should I be doing 8 till 9 rather than 8:30 till 9:30? Let me know. Benji, thank you so much. And for everybody that's joined us and been with us since the jump. So Adrian, I think you were almost the first and the last comment. Thank you so much for spending an hour with us. And if you're watching on the replay, thank you for spending 1 hour and 4 minutes nearly of your time. It's been a pleasure. And amazing. Thanks again, Benji. And I will see you all next week. Thanks for listening, guys.